My parents' golden child moved in after his divorce, seduced my girlfriend. And when my parents defended him, I exposed them all publicly. My older brother recently divorced his second wife. His marriage didn't even last a year. It was a messy divorce and he wasn't able to claim anything because of the prenup. His first marriage lasted 2 years, and both of them cheated on each other constantly. They both didn't have much property or money, so there was nothing to claim. I cannot say the same for his second marriage though. They hadn't dated long, but she was genuinely a nice woman. She had taken him back even after he cheated on her the first 2 times, maybe more. She seemed like she was in love with him and wanted to make it work. My older brother was spoiled. Our parents pampered him too much and he had been hand-fed all his life. He had taken advantage of his second ex-wife and our parents wonder why he got divorced. They never corrected him, reprimanded him for anything. It was a nuisance. I, on the other hand, got the silent treatment if I did anything wrong, or if they thought I did anything wrong. They would not talk to me for days. At first, it used to bother me, but then I gave back what I received. They didn't care about me, so I wouldn't care about them. I went about my day normally, unbothered. I learned to parent myself. At least I had the sense to. Now since he divorced, he is asked to move in with me. I refused. I told him to move in with our parents instead. It is their golden child. They should take care of him. I was living with my girlfriend. 1 year, she had moved in with me 2 months ago. She didn't own a house. I started investing at a young age and made a few very good ones. Hence, I was able to own the house and afford my lifestyle. I didn't indulge though. I had a very minimalistic taste. Now, my parents call me up, which they rarely do, and ask me to let my brother move in. I told them no, that pissed them off. I laughed when they tried to tell me that he was going through a rough time. I told them I wasn't the one who told him to cheat. Their horrified gasps were hilarious. It was as if they couldn't believe their golden boy could do such a thing. I hung up on them. Now, my girlfriend and I were good, but I wasn't feeling the passion. It was a dull relationship and I made her aware of how I felt. She said that she didn't want to break up and that we could try doing more stuff together to strengthen our connection. I didn't think it was going to work, but I gave it a chance. This conversation was fresh and took place around 15 days ago. 2 days after my conversation with my parents, my brother shows up at my door. I wasn't at the house, so my girlfriend let him in. He had come with his bags packed and that idiot let him in. I was pissed when I came back home. I didn't like him if it wasn't already obvious. My parents favored him over me and I had to go through a lot because of him. I had tried to build a relationship with him, but he stabbed me in the back. One time, I confided in him about my crush. We were in high school. He hyped me up telling me to confess to her and got me all excited. The next day, I saw him making out with her in front of the class that I and she were in. I cried that day. I went home and told my parents about it, and they told me to get over my childish crush because it could be something serious for my brother. I told them she didn't even know who she was until yesterday when I confided in him about her. That stunned them for a second. He didn't even apologize about it. He was a narcissist. He instead tried getting more of a reaction out of me. My parents were still on his side. At that point, I'd given up on him. I moved on and did my own thing. Even if he asked what I was doing or if he wanted to make conversation with me, I didn't indulge him. There were quite a few incidents even before this crush thing. One time, I wanted to go on a school trip with my friends. I asked him if he was going, but he said no. So I asked him if he could convince our parents to let me go on the trip. It was a bit expensive, and they didn't usually let me go on any such trips. He, on the other hand, went on every single trip. It sucked. My parents did say yes to the trip, but not to me, to him. I really wanted to go on that trip. I asked them myself and they said that my brother was going and they could only afford to pay for one kid. Now back to the situation. I didn't know why he wanted to stay with me. What was he thinking? So when I came home, my first instinct was to kick him out. He started crying and begging me to let him stay for a few days. I didn't feel pity for him. He hadn't even regretted cheating on either of his wives or his other previous girlfriends. He laughed with his friends about it, telling them that they were so dumb. There was something seriously wrong with him. I had heard this conversation when we were over at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. All our relatives were going to be there, so I had to join in too. The man knew nothing about loyalty or love. I wasn't about to let him into my house, much less my life. My girlfriend on the other hand stopped me saying that he was my brother, and that I should let him stay for a few days. I told her that he could stay with our parents too. They would welcome him with open arms. He started his fake crying again. I told him if he continued this, I would call security on him. That shut him up real quick. My girlfriend took me aside and tried to calm me down. I was still angry though. I asked her why she let him in. She told me she let him in because he was my brother. She proceeded to convince me to give him a chance and to let him stay for a while. I looked at him and asked why he wanted to stay with me. He told me he missed me. I can't believe I almost bought it for a second. I just wanted to have dinner, take a bath, and go to sleep. I was tired, so I told him he could stay here for 3 to 4 days, and then he had to be on his way out. He tried huffing and puffing, but I told him he could get out now if he wanted. I didn't trust him. He was here because he missed me. I knew him inside and out. He wanted something. We didn't interact much as I had to go to work, but on the second day, I came home earlier. It was the weekend and I had finished off early. I opened the door to my house. No one was there. I called out, but received no response. Even if my girlfriend wasn't there, where was he? She usually came home earlier. I called her later, but got no response. I didn't worry much, but then it was almost midnight and I had no idea where either of them was. I called my parents and asked them if my brother was there and they said no. I waited for them, and around 3 a.m., I heard the door opening. He didn't have a key, so it had to be my girlfriend. The lights were off so she didn't think I was there. I heard footsteps coming behind her, and when they were near enough I turned the lights on. I could hear them giggling while trying to be silent. They flinched, startled. They were hanging on to each other standing there with their clothes crumpled. It looks like my girlfriend and brother had a fun night. She had hickeys all over her neck, and they very clearly weren't from me, or I just stared at them. My brother didn't even look embarrassed. I hadn't expected this from her. The next thing I said was get out. My brother laughed and told me to get out. I was surprised. Whose house did he think this was? He continued by answering my unvoiced question. He said that it was my girlfriend's house, and that I had no right to tell them to get out. She just kept staring at the ground embarrassed. At least they weren't that drunk. I just started laughing. My brother thought this was her house. No wonder he wanted to come over and stay here. This was hilarious to me. My ex, whom I wasn't going to take back, started apologizing. She tried to stumble her way toward me, telling me that it was a mistake and that it wouldn't happen again. I knew my feelings were fading for her, but I was still hurt. I didn't want to cry, but I was upset. I wanted to scream at them. My crying would only satisfy my brother. So after I finished my laughing fit, I calmly told him that this house was owned by me. I proceeded to click a picture of them and immediately sent it on to the family group. This made him nervous. He asked me what I was doing and I told him to check the family group. While he did that, I called security. Both of them panicked. My brother's expression of horror when he looked at his phone was so satisfying. My girlfriend tried to speak, but I cut her off, telling her that if it wasn't already clear, we were over. I told her to pack up her stuff and get out, or I would get someone to throw it out the next day. My brother started crying. He could act. He profusely apologized, telling me it was a mistake. I couldn't take him. I told him that I knew it wasn't a mistake. I told him he was a gold digger and a walking STD. I was angry now. I yelled at my ex, telling her I didn't know she was such a big woman. I questioned what she was thinking. Out of all the people she cheated on me with my brother, she got teary-eyed. She started apologizing again, telling me she loved me and that he showed up where she worked and seduced her, that it meant nothing. I told her, yeah, it meant nothing. This relationship meant nothing. Security came up and I pushed them aside and let them in. I told security to kick those two out as they weren't leaving on their own. My brother started screaming and begging. She, on the other hand, gave up. I shouted out that they could both enjoy their romance on the streets, homeless, 1-year relationship down the drain. I shut the door and took a deep breath. I convinced myself that she meant nothing to me and tried to go to sleep. The next day, my parents called me. I didn't want to answer, but I thought, let's get it over with. They started ranting that I should never have sent that picture to the group and that he was lonely, that's why he did that. I told them they were pathetic parents and hung up. What I did do was record the conversation. I once again sent it to the group. The group was already filled with texts questioning my brother about how he could do that to me. This recording would blow it over. They deserved it. Let everybody know their true colors. I blocked my parents, ex, and brother. My parents tried to do damage control on the group, but it didn't work. Everybody was furious with them. I was getting my revenge. A day later, my brother's second ex-wife reached out to me. She was still in the family group. She apologized for what I went through. I don't know if I want to get even more involved in my brother's drama. Update 1 week later. My ex showed up to collect her things. I had already packed it up and left it in the lobby. I didn't want to see her or talk to her. The group is still blowing up. My parents left the group, but were added back. The rest of our family wasn't done with them. Some of them even apologized to me for not noticing this behavior before. My brother was getting dragged by all our cousins. Everybody had started speaking up about his behavior. My so-called parents and brother deserve this treatment. They wouldn't live this down for the rest of their lives. NTA. NTA. You're strong AF. If it were me in your position, I would have started crying when they walked in. The audacity they had to walk into your house after they hooked up. Holes. They deserve to be on the streets. Update 2, 1 month later. Things have gotten even more complicated. My brother tried to move in with my ex-girlfriend, but she kicked him out after a week when she caught him trying to access her bank accounts. Apparently, he thought she was wealthy like her previous partners. What he didn't know was that she'd been living paycheck to paycheck, and most of her designer clothes were knockoffs. My parents showed up at my workplace yesterday. Security had to escort them out when they started making a scene, claiming I was destroying the family. My boss was surprisingly understanding and even offered me a few days off to deal with the situation. I declined. Work has become my sanctuary. The family group chat has split into two separate groups now. One supports my parents and brother, claiming family should stick together no matter what. The other group, led by my Aunt Sarah, has been sharing stories about my brother's past manipulations that I never knew about. Turns out he'd tried similar stunts with our cousin's partners before, but everyone kept quiet to keep the peace. My ex-girlfriend sent me a long email apologizing and trying to explain herself. She claimed my brother had been manipulating her for weeks, showing up at her workplace, telling her I was cheating, and even fabricating evidence. I deleted the email without responding. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter anymore, the trust is gone. The most surprising development came from my brother's second ex-wife. She reached out again and invited me to lunch. Over coffee, she revealed that she had evidence of my brother's financial frauds during their marriage, evidence that could lead to serious legal consequences. She never used it during the divorce because she just wanted out, but now she's considering pressing charges. I told her that while I appreciate her sharing this with me, I don't want to be involved. I've had enough drama for a lifetime. My parents have started sending flying monkeys, distant relatives and family friends, to talk sense into me. Each one gets the same response, a block number and a cease and desist warning. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is living well and letting toxic people destroy themselves. I've started therapy to deal with all this. My therapist helped me realize that this situation, while painful, has been oddly liberating. For the first time in my life, I'm completely free from my family's manipulation. I've redecorated my house, started taking dance classes, and even adopted a cat. His name is Justice, and he's better company than my ex or my family ever was. Last week, I ran into my brother at the grocery store. He looked terrible. Apparently, none of his friends were willing to take him in permanently. He tried to approach me, but I just walked away. I heard him calling after me, crying about how he's homeless and needs help. I remembered all the times he'd hurt me, all the times he'd played victim, and I kept walking. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. Update 3, my brother's second ex-wife went through with the fraud charges. He's now facing serious legal trouble. The investigation revealed he'd been running similar schemes with all his relationships. Apparently, he had a pattern: marry wealthy partners, siphon money through fake joint business ventures, then orchestrate elaborate cheating scenarios when he'd taken what he could. The police found evidence of at least 5 other victims besides his ex-wives. My parents mortgaged their house to pay for his legal defense. They're still convinced he's innocent, claiming everyone is conspiring against their precious boy. The irony? They had to ask me for money when they couldn't make the mortgage payments. I declined and suggested they sell their designer watches and luxury cars first. They called me heartless. I called it karma. The family is permanently fractured now. Holiday gatherings have split into 2 camps. Aunt Sarah hosts one celebration for those who cut ties with my brother and parents, while my parents host another for those who support them. Last Christmas, I heard their gathering consisted of just them, my brother, who's out on bail, and 2 elderly relatives who still believe his lies. My ex-girlfriend hit rock bottom after losing her job. Turns out sleeping with your partner's sibling doesn't look good to employers when it becomes public knowledge. She tried to spin the story on social media, painting herself as a victim of my brother's manipulation. It backfired when several of her previous partners came forward with similar stories of betrayal. She's moved back to her hometown, allegedly to find herself. The most unexpected development? I've started dating my brother's second ex-wife, Anna. It wasn't planned. We kept meeting for coffee to discuss the legal case, and something just clicked. She understands my family trauma in a way no one else can. We're taking things slowly, both still healing from our past relationships, but it feels different. Healthy. Real. My career has taken off. The focus I used to waste on family drama has been redirected into my work. I've been promoted twice, and I'm now heading my own team. My colleagues joke that cutting out toxic family members is the secret to professional success. Justice the cat has a new friend. I adopted another rescue named Karma. They spend their days judging visitors from their cat tower, which I find hilariously appropriate. My house feels like a home now, filled with peace instead of drama. The family group chat chronicles have become legendary in our extended family's younger generation. My teenage cousins use the screenshots as examples of how not to be. One of them even did a sociology paper on family dynamics and toxic favoritism, using our situation as a case study. She got an A. My brother tried one last manipulation tactic. He sent me a handwritten letter from his lawyer's office, claiming he has a terminal illness. Aunt Sarah's daughter works at the hospital he claimed to be treated at. There's no record of him ever being there. The letter went straight into my evidence folder, joining the collection of his other documented lies. I've started mentoring young adults from similar family backgrounds. Every Saturday, we meet in a support group to share stories and healing strategies. It's therapeutic, turning my pain into something constructive. One of the group members said something that stuck with me: family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shares your values. My parents' friends have started reaching out privately, admitting they've had concerns about my brother's behavior for years but were afraid to speak up. Some have shared stories of him borrowing money he never repaid, or making inappropriate advances toward their partners. The pattern stretches back to his high school days. The upcoming court date looms over everything. Anna's evidence is strong, and other victims have joined the case. My brother's lawyer has already approached us about a plea deal. My parents are beside themselves, finally facing the possibility that their golden child might face real consequences. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I miss the family I thought I had, before I understood the depth of their toxicity. Other days, I feel nothing but relief at having escaped. My therapist says both reactions are valid: grief for what should have been, relief for what no longer is. Looking back at the person I was a year ago, I barely recognize her. She was so caught up in seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. Now? I'm building a life based on authenticity rather than obligation. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it.